Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Now, this is part 2 of Fiona Timms, the White Zulu's article on elephants at the Okavongo swamps. Sunday, the 10th of August. At lunch, we always have a lovely hot dish like lasagna, mushroom tagliatelle, or moussaka, accompanied by a smorgasbord of salads, all beautifully presented. Today, a bearded woodpecker decided to perch on the branch of the nearby trees that shades the table, and began busily pecking the wood of the branch overhanging the salad buffet, showered bark onto the salads. I was surreptitiously trying to pick the bigger bits of bark out of the salads, and was just going to pass the rest of it off as coarsely ground black pepper, fervently hoping it wasn't toxic, when Mrs. Suzuki came for her helping. She simply bowed and said, "Ah, woodpecker salad," when she saw the culprit and took a liberal helping. Motsi, other Japanese, is the total opposite. He is over 6 feet tall and very gloomy. He chain smokes, has no English, and doesn't want to sit at the table and eat with the other guests. I tried to chat to him, ask him what he does. Doctor, specialist in herbal medicine, I think is what he said. We assume he's in the middle of some personal crisis and leave him alone now. Monday, the 11th of August. Lions, leopards, hippos, and hyenas now calling all night. A bull elephant terrorizes a starved village for a change and gives us a rest. We have Kate Turkington and her husband, Alan, staying for 2 nights. She is a well-known figure in literary circles in South Africa, and particularly on television. She is also very approachable and delightful to talk to. Kate and I are good friends already, and she's asked me to stay in Johannesburg with them whenever I'm coming back to South Africa. She and her husband own a publishing company, and she just loves my letters home when I give her a couple of sample copies. Wednesday, the 12th of August. An elephant pulled up some water pipes last night and then stepped on the pump and squashed it flat for good measure. So there's no water being pumped out of the lagoon. The 12 bore came up on Alpha Golf whiskey and some rounds of number 6 shot, perfect just to bounce off the elephant's thick hide and get them to move out of the camp. Now we can fire off a few shots at the baboons as well. The bastards have brazenly crept into the camp early in the morning and pulled the swallows' nests off the eaves of our office hut, eating all their nestlings, which the poor birds were busy feeding, as well as their eggs. The mailbag also came with a letter from Diana, my sister, dated the 30th of July. It's lovely to get news from home. At this stage, I ought to give you a description of the office and the camp in general. It's a large rondavel situated in the middle of the camp. The rest of the public areas are a long dining room table outside on the bank, overlooking the waters of the delta, and there's an open thatch bar next to it with a similar view. There's also a gift shop which sells curios and, amongst other things, a lot of clothing with wildlife and the Ghana logo printed on it. I was amused at breakfast this morning when a smallish crocodile, they call Blackie, approximately 1.5 meters long, he came marching out of the water, up the bank and along the bare-earthed area, where the long dining room table overlooked the delta. Apparently this is his normal route to a log of a fallen tree which juts over the lagoon, right in front of the bar where he likes to bask. It just happened that all the guests had sat down to eat their breakfast when he came walking purposely through. They just had time to jump to their feet and scurry away before he walked the length of the ground underneath the table to reappear from under the cloth on the other side and continue to his log. There's a hyena, or possibly several, which love to come at night, climb onto the thatch bar and grab the optics, device attached to an inverted bottle for dispensing measured tots of liquid, such as whiskey, gin, etc. They choose the sweet, creamy liqueurs such as Amarula cream or Bailey's Irish cream and crack the bottles with their strong teeth, allowing the sticky liqueur to dribble out all over the bar counter, where they lick most of it up. Again, as we have to account for every milliliter of liquor which has flown up, we have to lock these away, as well as the drum the kitchen staff beat to announce meal times. If we leave the drum out, the hyenas eat all the skin off it. As the two camps are run on identical lines, I again commandeered the old computer and the smaller desk for all my admin work, such as staff rosters, guests' arrival and departures, and menu planning, etc. The only drawback is that a swarm of bees have made a hive somewhere under the thatched eaves of the office. And as the windows in front of my desk are always open, bees come in and get trapped inside the torn mosquito screen. Finally, they fall into the paper tray of the old dot matrix printer, and some drop into the open cavities of the printer itself. So when I do a print run, I have to pick the squashed bees off the paper with my fingers afterwards. It also makes everything very sticky from their pollen and honey. Now and again I've had to pry the odd dead bee out from underneath the keys of my keyboard using a paperclip. The sand around the camp is always neatly raked by a bushman of the Khoisan tribe. He's from the Kalahari and absolutely minute, barely reaching my waist, with a very yellow, wizened face. Nobody can pronounce his name, which begins with an X, so we call him Kenny. Everybody likes Kenny. He's always smiling and speaking in a strange language, which consists mainly of clicks which no one can understand. I notice he constantly keeps a small patch of sandy red soil wet, using the hose pipe hanging coiled up against our office wall. This is to allow the many swallows which nest under the thatched eaves of the office to collect mud for their nests. On the weekends, or when Kenny is away guiding guests on a camping trip away from the lodge, he's the very best tracker anyone could find. Using sign language, he hands me the hose, and gesticulating with smiles on his wrinkled little face and many clicks that I must keep the patch wet for the swallows. So I do. One morning, while I'm scurrying from the office to the kitchen, Kenny calls me over to where he's been raking and shows me a very strange creature. It's a long, pink, blind worm, about a foot long and almost transparent. It blunders its way under Kenny's careful supervision, gently guided by his rake into safety in the shrubbery, and far away from any of the Tswana staff mistaking it for a snake. Fred runs the generator every day, from midday until 10 o'clock in the evening. To save fuel, because he is rationed, he usually turns it off for 2 hours in the afternoon, while the guests are having their siesta. As it is now 38 degrees Celsius at that time, the generator turns an irrigation system which waters the lawns and of course the trees, creating a lush green oasis on the island. Beyond our camp is mainly sandy soil, in some places with a strange dusting of salt, and then bush. Occasionally a young woman, one of the guests, sunbathes in a bikini on the lawn chairs provided for each misasa. Fred, who is 50-ish and fairly round, invariably finds work around those areas, checking on the irrigation and generally seeing to maintenance so that he can get a good look at the bikini-clad women. Wickedly, Kira and I stroll up to him very casually to ask him some innocuous question, just to see how furtive he looks, and how quickly he scurries away from the scene. After a fairly chilly start at our previous camp, Tsaro, Fred, and I have warmed up to each other, and we are now good friends. The kitchen, too, has a lovely convivial atmosphere. The staff must have been very wary about my coming, especially as they were at the mercy of the BHF, an appallingly bad-tempered, volatile, and rude permanent manageress the rest of the time. But Kutsi, the best cook at Tsaro, must have reassured them that Sissy is kind and never shouts at the staff. So, I am Sissy, here as well. All the Tswana staff call the two permanent female managers Mrs. So-and-so, but amongst themselves they had decided to call me Sissy, meaning sister, simply because I treated them with polite respect and didn't berate them all the time. The head cook at Guzana is a very slightly built middle-aged woman called Gladys. She works like a Trojan and is a brilliant cook, and now with so much help from Kutsi, who is in the same league, morale in the kitchen is very high, and as a result the food is utterly delicious and there's very little reason for me to interfere. I walk in at 7:30 every morning and go through the day's menu with them. Issue them with all the ingredients they need, and then I'll leave them to it. Everything, down to the last pinch of salt, has to be locked away in the big pantries where the deep freezers and fridges are also kept. 3 times a day I go in with a basket and a list drawn up by the kutsa. In the same way as I would go around a supermarket, I choose everything on the list, even counting out the right amount of eggs, tablespoons of olive oil, vinegar and mustard to make up the mayonnaise, then I leave them to it. I've lent them my little portable shortwave radio cassette player, and they play music quietly while they prepare the food. It seems that Kutsa has already taught them the Macarena, which I had taught them at Saro, because when I play the tape at Guzana, they all dance it perfectly. Kira, who has been working as relief hostess for a couple of years at both camps now, can't believe the change in the staff's attitude. Neither can Fred. There is constant harmony in the camp now. Everybody, guests and staff alike, love to hear the women singing their own songs in their African harmony. Some of our guests have recorded them from outside the kitchen window. Again, the guest comments on the standard of service and the quality of food is all very high praise indeed. Once I've seen to it that the kitchen is up and running and the guests have gone out of their game drives, either by vehicle or dugout canoes, I do a round of the masasas to check that the cleaning and bed changes have been done properly. I carry a very long-handled feather duster with me so that I can get at the cobwebs right at the highest beams of the thatch roof, as there is no ceiling. There are lots of Peter's epauletted fruit bats, which have put themselves to bed under the eaves of the thatch at dawn, hanging there upside down by their feet in bunches like fruit. I simply cannot resist tickling their tummies with a feather duster, and watch as they indignantly chitter and rustle their leathery wings, pulling them further around their furry bellies and away from the offending ostrich feathers. I know that the guests would probably freak out if they knew that they were walking underneath so many roosting bats every time they went into their huts in the daytime, but luckily they never look up, and those bats are well camouflaged. Fred has finally been able to fix the pump, but the filter is broken beyond repair. He has radioed Maun to ask them to send him a new one, and they have said that they would look around and find a second-hand one locally. He is fuming because the cost of filter can't be more than 50 pula, or 20 pounds, and in the meantime the water coming out of the taps is slightly murky with silt. All the drinking water is available in bottled water, sold at guest prices of American dollars. We staff have the choice of paying a large chunk of our salary towards drinking fresh water, or taking a chance and drinking the tap water. Since I'm saving up to buy my summer uniform, also at guest prices, from the gift shop, I simply can't afford to pay so much for bottled water. Anyway, all my life I have drunk water which came straight out of the river, so I'm not too worried about it. Next time, I fall seriously ill and am looked after by Saddam, the bull elephant. And that's the end of this chapter by Fiona Timms.